Nova Scotia, a small but astonishing Canadian maritime province, located on the eastern seaboard of North America. Over the past few years, Nova Scotia has started to draw many immigrants with its beautiful landscapes, growing economy, and strive for sustainability. In this video, I will be going over the human geography of this unique Atlantic province. We will be going over four main themes: demographic statistics, migration and settlement patterns, employment and economy, and sustainability initiatives. Let's start with the demographics of Nova Scotia. As of 2016, which was the last census, Nova Scotia has a population of 923,598 people. It has a population density of 17.4. The median age of 45.5 is relatively higher than in most provinces. However, the working population is still able to support the dependency load, as we can observe in the population pyramid shown. This pyramid represents the 2013 population. However, the dependency load of the year 2016 was 34.4%. Before addressing the demographics concerning different cultures, it is critical to understand the history behind these statistics. A diverse history of Aboriginal, Acadian, African, and Gaelic culture surrounds Nova Scotia's origins. The first people in what is now Nova Scotia were the Mi'kmaq. They have been dated back to 10,000 years ago and are the original inhabitants of Nova Scotia. However, when European colonists started settling in the area, their freedom was suppressed. Once, the entire population of Nova Scotia was Aboriginal. In the 2016 census, it was recorded to have 51,495 Aboriginal people in Nova Scotia, making up a mere 5.7% of the population. There are only 19,090 registered Mi'kmaq and 42 reserves and settlements. However, nowadays, both sides aim to honor the 1752 Peace and Friendship Treaty. The Acadians represent a majority of the French-speaking population. However, they represent only 2.6% of the total population of Nova Scotia. It is likely for there to have been more Acadians in Nova Scotia, if conflict did not ensue between the French and British over territory. Africans only represent 1.9% of the total population, but their culture in Nova Scotia goes all the way back to the American Revolution. Black loyalists, as well as former black slaves who were promised freedom in exchange for loyalty to the crown, came to Nova Scotia following the American Revolution. After the War of 1812, more African refugees were sent to Nova Scotia. The Gaelic culture is by far the most widespread culture found in Nova Scotia. Together, the Scottish and Irish population number 50.1% of the population. This means that more than half of the province's residents are descendants from the Irish and Scottish immigrants from the 18th and 19th centuries. In 1621, King James I named the territory New Scotland and granted the land to Scottish colonizer Sir William Alexander. Now, if we look at the ethnic, religious, and language demographics, there are many apparent connections to the past. For example, looking at the statistics on religion, Christianity is the most common religion, holding around 75% of the population. We can predict this is due to the considerable amount of European settlement. In the 2016 census, the most reported ethnic origins were Canadian, Scottish, and English, which is clearly explained through history. As well, the most common language appears to be English, making up 91.9% of the population. Now that demographics have been explained, let's move on to the migration and settlement patterns found in Nova Scotia. Let's start with the migration patterns. As previously explained, in the past, most migrants coming into Nova Scotia were international, coming from European countries, although a small but significant amount of immigrants came from the United States. For a while, Nova Scotia's population was decreasing. Many people wanted to emigrate and move to other provinces where jobs were better and easier to get. However, the Nova Scotia government says the province's population is currently at an all-time high, primarily due to immigration. The natural increase rate has consistently been at a negative number, signaling that net migration could only be the reason for this population boom. Nova Scotia's recent population growth started in 2015 and has grown by 34,870 since July 1st of that year. Nova Scotia's population increased by 4,686 between April 1st and July 1st, 2019. This made the population as of July 1st the highest recorded in Nova Scotia history. The population was 971,395. Quarterly immigration continues to be more than historical averages. The immigration rate has not only gone higher, but immigrants are coming from more diverse backgrounds. Nowadays, countries such as the Philippines, China, and India are home to many immigrants. Immigrants coming from interprovincial migration are also becoming more prevalent in Nova Scotia. In-migrants to Nova Scotia increased from British Columbia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland and Labrador, Ontario, and Manitoba. Meanwhile, outmigration has decreased. But where are these immigrants settling? Let's take a look at the settlement patterns of Nova Scotia. As in the rest of Canada, Nova Scotia has experienced a dramatic shift from rural to urban living. Some important cities are Halifax, Sydney, and Dartmouth. However, its rural population remains relatively high at 42.6% of the total population. Halifax is both the capital and the largest urban center in the province. It holds the biggest population cluster in the province. This city holds roughly 44% of the provincial population. The population of Halifax grew to 403,390 people in 2016. This is an increase of over 390,000 people from 2011. Meanwhile, the population in rural and less developed urban areas of the province have gone down. For example, the population of New Glasgow, a much less urbanized area than Halifax, decreased by 3.7%. As the baby boomer generation approaches retirement, the younger generation is starting to find more work in urban centers like Halifax, thus making them more inclined to move away from their rural homes. The Halifax workforce saw a 9% record increase in 15 to 24-year-olds who entered the labor force. The number of people 45 and older in the labor force decreased. The unemployment rate for young people ages 15 to 24 fell in 2018 from 16.1% to 13.7%. More and more young people are finding work in Halifax. We can conclude that more people are starting to settle in urban areas rather than rural areas. But why is the population of Halifax increasing so dramatically? Let's move on to the third theme, concerning employment and economy. Nova Scotia used to be widely known for its industries in agriculture, forestry, fishing, mining, and hunting. Although these industries are still significant in Nova Scotia's economy, rapid urbanization has created modern and more successful industries in Nova Scotia. If we look at this graph, real estate, rental, and leasing take the top spot as they account for 15.74% of Nova Scotia's GDP. This increase is mainly based around Halifax, since most immigrants are more inclined to move to the larger cities that hold better job opportunities. In fact, the population boom in Halifax is driven primarily by prosperous manufacturing and construction industries. If we look at this graph, together these two industries make up 13.29% of Nova Scotia's GDP. Meanwhile, agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting only make up 3.2%, while mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction make up a mere 0.69%. Tourism is not a principal industry in Nova Scotia. Art, entertainment, and recreation make up only 0.61% of the GDP. Many people will visit places like the Cabot Trail, Halifax Harbour, and Peggy's Cove. However, due to Nova Scotia's increase in popularity, tourism has started to increase. In 2017, Nova Scotia experienced a record-breaking year for the industry. In all, a record of 2.4 million visitors came to the province in 2017, and tourism revenue was estimated at $2.7 billion. For comparison, 2017 saw about 195,000 more visitors than in 2016. This is an increase of 9%. To wrap this section up, Nova Scotia has recently seen an increase in urbanization. This has led to an increase in construction, manufacturing, and real estate industries. Now let's move on to the final theme that will be discussed in this video, sustainability initiatives. The government of Nova Scotia is dedicated to finding sustainable alternatives to decrease the effects of climate change. Before discussing these initiatives, here's a background to the energy production and consumption of Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia's energy is mainly derived from natural gas, crude oil, and electricity. Nova Scotia accounts for less than 0.1% of the total Canadian crude oil production, just under 1% of the total Canadian natural gas production, and approximately 2% of the Canadian electricity generation. 24% of electricity was created using renewable energy. The largest sector for energy use was transportation at 44% of total demand, followed by residential at 24%, industrial at 19%, and commercial at 13%. In 2016, Nova Scotia's total energy demand was the 9th largest in Canada. At first, these statistics may not seem very detrimental to the environment. However, the government has realized that non-renewable energy usage must go down in the province. They have already set and achieved many goals. They hope to decrease greenhouse gas emissions and combat climate change. As a matter of fact, climate change has created and will continue to cause drastic change to Nova Scotia if action is not taken. The effects of Hurricane Dorian are examples of the destruction that these changes will cause. Hurricane Dorian was a Category 1 storm that swept through the Maritimes at the beginning of September 2019. It hit Halifax with winds of 100 miles per hour and cut off power for 450,000 people. While the storm itself cannot be pinpointed to climate change, the frequency of storms can. If these storms continue to pound the coasts, there's one area that's being considered especially vulnerable, the Chignectois Mist. This is a stretch of land that connects Nova Scotia to New Brunswick, and ultimately to the rest of the country. This area is currently being protected by a system of dikes. However, one powerful storm could flood the area and separate Nova Scotia from the rest of the country. This would cut off critical transportation systems. Looking at these horrific consequences, it is of the utmost importance for the government to implement sustainability initiatives to combat this urgent problem. The government has already set goals to reduce the province's greenhouse gas emissions by 53% below 2005 levels before 2030, and make Nova Scotia's carbon footprint net zero by 2050. Their endeavors are clearly succeeding as they achieve their past federal goal 13 years early. Nova Scotia has not only worked to reduce these emissions, but have also invested in the transition to renewable energy. Electricity generation from coal has already gone down from 76% in 2007 to 52% in 2018. Clean electricity generation tripled in the last decade. They are on track to meet the 40% renewable energy for electricity by 2020. This concludes our last topic. In conclusion, Nova Scotia is a remarkable province. Its increasing employment rate, expanding economy, and proactiveness concerning sustainability are positive signs for its development into a notable piece of Canada. If you're planning to immigrate, Nova Scotia might just be your new home.